Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak in opposition to House Resolution 783. The resolution before us contemplates changes to the Constitution regarding the mandatory retirement age for judges. The resolution contains two key points. The first is that it changes the language that will be contained in the ballot question presented to the voters. And the second is that it changes the date of the voter referendum from the upcoming primary election to the general election in the fall. Mr. Speaker, I respect the maker of this resolution very much, but that being said, I cannot support these two changes for several specific reasons. First, the revised ballot language contemplated by the resolution, in my view, is deficient. The current language that has been developed by the Secretary of the Commonwealth is scheduled to appear on the primary ballot says, shall the Pennsylvania Constitution be amended to require that justices of the Supreme Court, judges, and justices of the peace, known as magisterial district judges, be retired on the last day of the calendar year in which they attain the age of 75 years instead of the current requirement that they be retired on the last day of the calendar year in which they attain the age of 70. Now, I'll be the first to say that that language is clunky. The replacement language, which I'd also like to read, saying, this is the proposed replacement language, shall the Pennsylvania Constitution be amended to require that justices of the Supreme Court, judges, and magisterial district judges be retired on the last day of the calendar year in which they attain the age of 75 years. I would suggest that language is deficient because it does not say to the person in the polling place, in the booth, who has no idea has never seen this issue before and is just going in to vote, they have no idea what the current limit is. They might say, oh, well, I guess we don't have any limit on when our judges have to retire. Maybe we should have one at 75, or maybe they wouldn't be aware that we have one at 70 right now. I would suggest that it is very important for the voter to be informed that the question they're being asked to decide is, do they want to move the retirement age from 70 to 75? The second reason that I feel this resolution should be voted down is that the change proposed here will cost both the counties and the state significantly. Counties will need to reprint ballots that have already been printed for an election that is only 20 days away. Absentee ballots that have been mailed out will need to be remailed. There's a cost to advertising. In fact, the advertising that I pulled off the web here says right at the bottom, paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars, this advertisement is funded in whole by the general fund. We will have to re-advertise this for the November election. I would suggest there is no reason to spend that money again. Third, Mr. Speaker, on page 3 of the resolution, it states that one of the intentions of the resolution is to move the question from the primary ballot to the general election ballot because we want more people to participate. We anticipate a higher voter turnout in the general election, and thus more people could be heard on this matter. Now, that may or may not be the question. That may or may not be true. I don't know. But one thing that we can certainly agree on is that this is not something that just fell out of the sky yesterday. Certainly, we could have anticipated that participation would be higher in the general election in the fall prior to going through all of the advertising, all of the ballot printing, and everything else. Also, and I believe this is key, Mr. Speaker, there are two amendments on the spring ballot. One with regard to this judicial age issue, and the second with regard to abolishing the Philadelphia Traffic Court. By saying that we are moving the one amendment on retiring age for judges from the spring to the fall because we want additional participation, are we somehow suggesting that the question on amending the Constitution with regard to the Philadelphia Traffic Court is not as important, or we don't care about that, or it's sufficient to let one group of voters vote on one question and another group of voters on the other? I would think it would be certainly easier to justify if we were contemplating moving both of those amendments to the fall election instead of one in the spring and one in the fall. Mr. Speaker, I have several other issues with this, but in the interest of time, I will leave my remarks at that, and I encourage a negative vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.